The inhaler broke into pieces on the ground. My daughter couldn't breathe. The mean HOA lady thought it was a vape and smashed my 15-year-old's asthma medicine. Linda didn't know I'm a police officer. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. Time for justice. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. HOA Karen breaks my daughter's allergy meds, thinking it's a vape, unaware I'm a police officer. The October sun was setting behind our quiet suburban neighborhood when my world turned upside down. I had just finished a 12-hour shift as a detective with the Metro Police Department, still wearing my plain clothes but carrying the weight of another day fighting crime in our city. All I wanted was to get home to my family and forget about the darkness I dealt with at work. My daughter Sophia, age 15, was sitting on our front porch steps doing homework when I pulled into the driveway. She looked up and smiled, the kind of genuine smile that reminded me why I chose to be one of the good guys. Sophia was everything to me: smart, kind, and mature beyond her years, but also dealing with severe allergies that required constant medical management. Since she was 8 years old, Sophia had carried an emergency inhaler for her severe asthma and allergic reactions. The device looked modern and sleek, designed to deliver life-saving medication quickly when her breathing became compromised. It wasn't just medicine to us, it was her lifeline, the difference between a normal day and a trip to the emergency room. Our neighborhood had been peaceful until Linda Morrison moved in 3 months ago. She immediately appointed herself as the unofficial HOA enforcer, despite our community being fairly relaxed about most regulations. Linda was everything you'd expect from the stereotypical Karen: short blonde hair, always complaining to managers, and an attitude that suggested she was personally responsible for maintaining civilization. She had already made enemies of half the neighborhood with her constant complaints. Mrs. Chen's garden gnomes were inappropriate, the Johnson family's basketball hoop was too close to the street, and apparently teenagers existing in their own front yards was somehow disrupting the community atmosphere. That evening, as I grabbed my duty bag from the car, I noticed Linda marching across the street toward our house with her usual determined stride. She carried her clipboard like a weapon and wore the expression of someone about to ruin someone's day. "Young lady," Linda shouted at Sophia, startling both of us. "You know very well that vaping is prohibited in common areas according to HOA Regulation 23C. I dropped my bag and looked over at Sophia, who was holding her inhaler and looked completely confused. She had been using it moments before. I could see the slight wheeze in her breathing that indicated her allergies were acting up again. "Ma'am, this isn't a vape," Sophia said politely, holding up the medical device. "It's my rescue inhaler. I have severe asthma and allergies and I need it when I can't breathe properly." Linda's face turned red with anger. "Don't lie to me. I know a vaping device when I see one. You teenagers think you can fool adults with your fake medical excuses." I started walking toward them, my police instincts kicking in as I recognized the escalating situation. Something about Linda's aggressive posture and Sophia's defensive body language told me this was about to go very wrong. "Ma'am," I called out, trying to keep my voice calm and professional. "That's actually my daughter's prescribed medication. She's telling you the truth about." "I don't want to hear any more lies," Linda interrupted, her voice becoming shrill. "I'm confiscating this illegal device right now." Before I could reach them, Linda lunged forward and grabbed Sophia's inhaler from her hands. In one violent motion, she threw it down on the concrete walkway with all her strength. The inhaler shattered into pieces, the metal cartridge rolling across the ground as medication sprayed everywhere. The distinctive smell of albuterol filled the air, a smell I knew well from too many emergency room visits with Sophia over the years. Sophia's scream cut through the evening air like a knife, not just from shock but from genuine terror. She dropped to her knees, frantically trying to gather the broken pieces of her life-saving medication. "My inhaler. Oh God, my inhaler," she cried, her breathing already becoming labored from the stress and her ongoing allergic reaction. "I can't breathe. Mom, I can't breathe." That's when something inside me snapped. Not just as a mother watching her child in distress, but as a police officer who had just witnessed an assault on a minor and destruction of medical property. I was beside Sophia in seconds, checking her breathing and trying to calm her panic while simultaneously reaching for my phone to call 911. Her breathing was becoming increasingly shallow, and without her rescue inhaler, we were facing a potential medical emergency. "Linda Morrison," I said, my voice carrying the full authority of my 15 years in law enforcement. "You have just committed assault on a minor, destruction of medical property, and potentially child endangerment. You are under citizen's arrest." Linda's face went from angry red to pale white in an instant. What? You can't arrest me. I was just enforcing HO. I'm Detective Sarah Martinez with Metro Police, I interrupted, pulling out my badge and holding it where she could see it clearly. And what you just did wasn't enforcement, it was a felony. The change in Linda's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. Her clipboard fell from her hands as the reality of the situation began to sink in. She had just assaulted a police officer's daughter and destroyed medical equipment in front of a witness who happened to be a detective. I didn't know. Linda stammered, backing away as I continued to tend to Sophia while keeping my eyes on her. Didn't know what? I asked coldly. Didn't know that destroying someone's medication is illegal? Didn't know that grabbing things from teenagers is assault? Or didn't know that you should ask questions before making assumptions? Sophia's breathing was getting worse, and I could see the familiar signs of a severe allergic reaction beginning to set in. Her lips were starting to look slightly blue, and she was having trouble getting full breaths. The ambulance arrived within 6 minutes, followed closely by 2 patrol cars. Officer Johnson, who I had worked with on several cases, approached with his partner while the paramedics immediately began treating Sophia. Detective Martinez? What's the situation here? Officer Johnson asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected this wasn't a simple medical call. Assault on a minor and destruction of medical property, I replied, gesturing toward Linda, who was now sitting on the curb looking like she might faint. The suspect destroyed my daughter's rescue inhaler, thinking it was a vaping device. Officer Johnson's expression hardened as he looked over at Linda. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back. But I was just trying to enforce HOA rules. Linda protested as the handcuffs clicked into place. I thought she was breaking the law. Even if she had been vaping, Officer Johnson replied sternly, you have no legal authority to physically take anything from anyone, especially a minor. What you did was commit multiple felonies. The paramedics worked quickly to stabilize Sophia's breathing using a nebulizer treatment, but they recommended transport to the hospital for observation and additional treatment. Her allergic reaction had been exacerbated by the stress of the situation, and without her rescue inhaler, managing her symptoms would be more difficult. As I rode in the ambulance with Sophia, holding her hand while she received oxygen, I made a mental note of everything that had happened. Linda Morrison was about to discover that messing with a police officer's family came with consequences she had never imagined. At the hospital, Dr. Patel, who had treated Sophia's allergies for years, was visibly angry when I explained what had happened. Someone destroyed her rescue inhaler? He asked incredulously. Do they understand that could have killed her? Without immediate access to medication during a severe reaction, Sophia could have gone into anaphylactic shock. The next few hours were spent ensuring Sophia's breathing stabilized and getting her a replacement inhaler. The incident had triggered a moderate allergic reaction that required additional medication and monitoring, but thankfully, nothing life-threatening. While Sophia rested, I began the process that would ensure Linda Morrison faced the full consequences of her actions. The charges I filed were comprehensive: assault on a minor, destruction of medical property, child endangerment, and harassment. Each charge carried serious penalties, and together they painted a picture of someone whose behavior had crossed far beyond the bounds of acceptable community enforcement. The police report was thorough and detailed. I included witness statements from 3 neighbors who had seen the incident, medical documentation of Sophia's condition and treatment, photos of the destroyed inhaler, and a complete timeline of events. But I wasn't satisfied with just criminal charges. Linda Morrison needed to understand the full impact of what she had done. I contacted the HOA board directly, requesting an emergency meeting to discuss Linda's conduct and the liability issues her actions had created for the community. The board president, Mr. Williams, was horrified when I explained what had happened. Detective Martinez, I want to assure you that Linda Morrison does not represent the values of our community, he said during our phone call. Her actions were completely unauthorized and absolutely unacceptable. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood about what had happened, and the community room was packed with residents who wanted to hear the full story. I stood before the board and the assembled neighbors, still in disbelief that I needed to explain why destroying a child's medication was wrong. My daughter Sophia has severe allergies and asthma, I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. The device Linda Morrison destroyed wasn't a toy or a recreational product. It was prescribed medication that she depends on to breathe. I held up the shattered remains of the inhaler, which I had collected as evidence. This is what's left of a $200 medical device that took 3 weeks to get approved by insurance. But more importantly, this is what stood between my daughter and a potentially fatal allergic reaction. The room was completely silent as I continued. Linda Morrison saw a teenager using a medical device and chose violence. She didn't ask questions, she didn't verify what she was seeing, and she didn't care about the consequences of her actions. She assaulted my daughter and could have killed her. Several neighbors were shaking their heads in disgust, and Mrs. Chin spoke up from the back of the room. Linda has been harassing everyone in this neighborhood for months. This was bound to happen eventually. Linda had been required to attend the meeting as part of her bail conditions. She sat in the front row, pale and quiet, a stark contrast to her usual aggressive demeanor. Board member Patricia Wells addressed Linda directly. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have anything to say about this incident?" Linda stood up slowly, her voice shaking. I thought she was vaping. I was trying to protect the community from illegal activity." "By assaulting a child?" Patricia asked sharply. "By destroying someone's medication without asking a single question about what it actually was?" The board's decision was unanimous. Linda Morrison was immediately removed from any unofficial enforcement role, banned from approaching other residents' children, and given a formal warning that any further harassment would result in a permanent ban from the community. But the real consequences were just beginning. Linda's criminal trial was scheduled for 3 months later. In the meantime, her story had spread throughout our city's law enforcement community. Police officers talked, and everyone soon knew about the woman who had assaulted a detective's daughter and destroyed medical equipment. The local news picked up the story after court documents became public record. The headline read, "HOA enforcer arrested for destroying child's asthma medication." The article included details about Sophia's medical condition and the potential severity of what could have happened without her rescue inhaler. Linda's employer, a local insurance company, began receiving calls from outraged customers who had seen the news coverage. Within a week, they announced that Linda Morrison was no longer with their organization. The trial itself was almost anticlimactic. Linda's lawyer tried to argue that she had acted in good faith, believing she was enforcing community rules, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera showed the entire incident. You could clearly see Sophia using the inhaler for legitimate medical reasons, Linda's aggressive approach, and the violent destruction of the medical device. Medical expert testimony explained the serious nature of Sophia's condition and how dangerous it was to be without her rescue medication. Dr. Patel testified that destroying someone's rescue inhaler was equivalent to taking away a diabetic's insulin or a heart patient's nitroglycerin. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. During sentencing, the judge's words were harsh but fair. "Mrs. Morrison, your actions that day were not those of a concerned community member, but of someone who chose aggression over inquiry, assumptions over facts. You endangered the life of a child because you couldn't be bothered to ask questions before acting." Linda received 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, community service with medical advocacy organizations, and was ordered to pay restitution for Sophia's medical expenses and emotional trauma. The civil lawsuit followed quickly. My attorney calculated damages that included not just the destroyed inhaler and medical costs, but also pain and suffering, the trauma of the assault, and punitive damages designed to send a message. "We're seeking $75,000 in total damages," my attorney explained. "This covers immediate costs, replacement equipment, counseling for Sophia, and a significant punitive component to deter similar behavior." Linda's insurance company settled quickly, not wanting to face a jury trial where a police detective's daughter had been assaulted by their policyholder. 6 months after the incident, our neighborhood had transformed completely. The new HOA leadership implemented comprehensive training programs about medical conditions and disability rights. They created educational materials about common medical devices and distributed them to every household. More importantly, they established a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of any kind, with immediate removal from the community for anyone who physically confronted another resident. Sophia recovered fully from the trauma, though she now carries 2 rescue inhalers as a precaution. She's become an advocate for other teenagers with medical conditions, speaking at her school about the importance of understanding before judging. "That scary day taught me that some people make assumptions about things they don't understand," Sophia told her classmates during a health awareness presentation. "But it also showed me that there are more good people than bad people, and that standing up for what's right matters." Linda Morrison moved away shortly after her release from jail. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she relocated to another state, hopefully to start fresh and learn from her mistakes. Our community is stronger now, with neighbors who look out for each other instead of looking for violations to report. The incident with Linda brought people together in a way that typical neighborhood activities never could. As a police officer, I've seen how quickly situations can escalate when people make assumptions instead of asking questions. Linda Morrison's case became a teaching example at our police academy about the importance of de-escalation and the dangers of vigilante enforcement. The broken inhaler pieces still sit in an evidence box at the courthouse, but they represent more than just destroyed property. They represent a moment when a community chose to do better, when a teenager's trauma became a catalyst for positive change, and when justice prevailed over ignorance. Sophia still uses her rescue inhaler regularly, but now she does so with confidence, knowing that her community understands and supports her medical needs. The device that once made her a target for harassment has become a symbol of her strength and resilience. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives teach us the most important lessons about courage, community, and the power of standing up for what's right. Linda Morrison thought she was enforcing rules, but she ended up creating a better, more understanding neighborhood for everyone. And Sophia? She's not just surviving with her medical condition, she's thriving, advocating, and inspiring others to choose understanding over assumption, compassion over judgment. The rescue inhaler still beeps occasionally when Sophia checks the dosage counter, but now it's a sound of hope rather than fear, a reminder that with the right support, even our greatest challenges can become our greatest strengths.